In today's episode, we're talking about what are money blocks? What do we mean by money blocks? Let's find out. Welcome. This is 𝐿𝐤𝐚𝐧, your money mindset expert, and I help entrepreneurs to break free from the limiting beliefs, to reverse their money shame, and to blast through the money blocks. And I'm so excited that we are doing today's episode on one of my favorite topics, which is money blocks. So this topic has come about because I keep getting asked this question. Gull, you keep talking about money blocks. You keep talking about money blocks. So what exactly do you mean by money blocks? And I forget sometimes that most of my audience is probably not familiar with the term money blocks, because it's a relatively new term. It's been thrown about a lot these days, but it's a relatively new term, and maybe people are unsure as to the meaning. And I thought, well, the best thing is for me to give you my definition of how I view money blocks, so that you can get a better understanding, and then and maybe do some sort of self-assessment to see where you're blocked with your money. So where are your money blocks, right? So money blocks, in the most simplest terms, can be referred to, or the way I see them, as your energetic emotional traumas. So for me, money blocks are actually your emotional traumas that you've encountered or suffered personally, most of which will be between the ages of 0 to 7. So most of these traumas will be from your childhood, which you personally experienced or witnessed your parents experiencing those. So it's one or the other. So it's either you experienced them personally or you witnessed your parents experience them. Or there isn't a third alternative where it could be generational. So it could be passed down to you through generations. I'll come on to that in a bit. This also could be, these emotion traumas are actually which define your character, your personality, and therefore dictates your energetic vibration, which actually in turn dictates what kind of circumstances, people and things come to you, which could lead on to future or later on traumas that you suffer. So for example, if you have emotion traumas from your childhood, that could lead you on to attracting additional emotional traumas or financial traumas in your teens, and therefore in your 20s, and then in your 30s, and then that's it. Then you keep attracting the similar sort of circumstances. You keep repeating the same pattern again and again and again. Why? Because that pattern is now ingrained into your energy field, and you're attracting similar circumstances and people or to yourselves again and again. It's like a loop. You keep repeating, doing the same thing again and again and again, right? So that's that's in essence what money blocks are. They're just emotional traumas that haven't been dealt with. Now, let me address this idea. Now, the fact that these emotion traumas do not have to be experienced by you personally. They could be you witnessing your parents going through it, which I think somehow you understand. But a lot of people get stuck on when they hear that they could have emotional traumas, not from themselves or from their parents, but actually from generations past. How? Let me explain. Now, you can look upon this in two ways. I'm going to give both definitions, okay? Psychology-wise, okay, based on psychology, you understand, and I think most people are, agree to this point. You learn what you are, what you're taught without you actually consciously making a choice as in terms of what you're taking in, what you're learning. All right, you learn from people around you. So most of your subconscious programming is done by your primary caregivers between the ages of 0 to 7. All right, so this is done between 0 to 7, and some of it is done in your early adolescence, preteen and teen and early adolescence as well. So this programming can go all the way, the remaining 20% can go all the way from preteen, teen, and all the way to early 20s. But by the time you're in your early 20s, this programming is done, it's solidified. what can happen is that in your early 20s, from early 20s to early 30s, you pull away from this early programming. So I do a lot. I know a lot of people say, well, actually, I never behaved like my parents. I actually pulled away from my parents. I went and did, explored the world, or I went to complete different fields and so forth. And I hear you and I understand what you're saying. And I agree that there is an element of pulling away from the old paradigm, from the parents' way of being in your 20s. That happens for a lot of people. That can happen in your teenage years and in your 20s. That's normal. What I'm here to tell you is, and anybody over 30 can actually relate to this now, when from the age of early 30s to early 40s, in this 10-year period, somewhere along the lines, there's something called a snapback. What's a snapback? It's basically when you go back to your old way of being, where you actually go back to the way of living that you did with your parents. So you actually adopt a lifestyle which is very similar to that of your parents. So the amount of money you have in terms of liquid cash, you may be making more money, but honestly, with inflation, it probably means liquid cash, you have the same amount. The kind of house you live, the kind of lifestyle you lead, the kind of holidays you have or don't have, it's very similar to that for your parents. So lifestyle becomes very, very similar to that your parents led in similar age. And therefore, you literally, I'm saying, snap back to the old way of being, okay? Why is that? Because you've been programmed to behave in a certain way, to have certain thoughts and ideas, and your thinking is done in a certain way, okay? Think logically. If you like spicy food, it's highly likely that your parents like spicy food. If you grew up wearing a certain type of clothes, your parents had a certain type of clothes. I mean, I dress modestly, and because my mother was very, very modest, I'm not as modest as my mother, but still my clothes are based very much on Islamic principles and modesty, because that's how my mother was, right? So we pull away a little bit from our parents, but generally our way of being is very similar to that of our parents. We always say this, you can estimate what kind of parents people will have based on how the child behaves, and vice versa. Depending on how the individual is, you can estimate what kind of children they will have, right? Because why? We say this, so everybody understands this, that's the kind of programming, that's the kind of upbringing, that's the kind of, a mindset that you give to your child, right? So so psychology teaches us the way our parents are, that's probably how we're going to think, behave, and that's the kind of paradigms we're going to hold, right? That's your mindset. So it's going to be very similar to that for your parents. That's psychology. Now let's go on to let's go a bit deeper with that. If that's the case, if your mindset, if your behavior, if your way of thinking is based on your parents, think a bit generation back now. So can you imagine, did your parents actually purposely choose those thoughts? Highly unlikely. They probably were given those thoughts by their parents, right? So if you imagine that you were programmed into this way of thinking and behaving by your parents, and then your parents were programmed into this way of thinking by their parents, and their parents were programmed to thinking this way by their parents, and can you see how far back this goes in terms of generation? So this generation trauma that you can have, this way of thinking and the way of being you can have, comes down, or trickles down all the way through generations. Okay, that's from psychology. Now, when you look upon it from the energy point of view, it's even more potent. So energetically, your energetic makeup is made up on your thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and justifications, and your paradigms. So whatever you believe to be true is true for you, because that's the kind of energetic frequency you're holding, and based on your frequency, that's your vibration. Based on your energetic vibration, that's what you're going to be attracting from the outside world. So you know law of attraction, right? With law of attraction, the simple idea is you attract to you whatever you're in vibrational harmony with, because at any given moment in time, your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas are going out into the ethers of the universe, because you're on a particular vibration. When you're feeling happy, you're on a particular vibration. When you're feeling sad, you're in a lower vibration. It's simple as that in layman terms. Okay, so the thoughts, the ideas, the feelings you're having towards things, that's causing you to be on a particular vibration. Now, if that's the case, if that's true, that means that if you are used to a certain way of thinking, your vibration has been you've been given this vibration from your parents. That's your energetic vibration. Okay, if they had some traumas, you would have some traumas because you witness it. Plus, you inherit the traumas from them energetically because you have their energetic imprint. Okay, your parents give you an energetic imprint. Now, if they had traumas from their parents, or which had it from their parents, that energetic imprint has been passed on from generation to generation to generation to generation. Can you see what I'm going with this? Right? So this is why it's so important for you to understand, these money blocks that you could have most likely are not yours to begin with. They've been given to you by your parents, but they weren't even theirs to begin with either, because they probably passed on from generations. Plus, if that has resulted in an additional trauma, for example, bankruptcy or other issues, that could cause additional traumas as well. Now, that's one part of it that's important. The other element of it is something that absolutely nobody talks about. And it sort of blows me away that, how can people ignore such an important element of your personality, of you as an individual, when it comes to your finances, which is if you've ever suffered abuse. So if you've ever had any kind of abuse, which can be physical, verbal, emotional, financial, or sexual, right? Any kind of abuse. And the more severe the abuse, the more of an impact it will have in your finances. Now, there's reason why your savings, doesn't matter what kind of saving plan you have, doesn't matter what kind of, what kind of money you make. If you have certain kind of abuse and you have flipped the switch, as I call it, and I talk about this in my Money Mindset Makeover workshop quite a lot. And I've done episodes on this as well. So go back and listen to the podcast if you haven't listened on the episode on savings, and it's probably the earlier episodes actually. If you go ahead and and think about your savings, and you don't have savings, and even though your income's really high and you're making quite a lot of money and you have a game plan, but some reason something always comes up and eats up your saving pot, then this is the reason why, because you probably haven't addressed the emotional traumas around certain kind of abuse. Okay, another one is debt. Now, debt has an energy of humiliation around it, and if you've been humiliated, especially if you've been sexually abused, and this doesn't have to be full-on rape, it could be sexual, touching or feeling uncomfortable or ridiculed or something like that. Any kind of abuse around humiliation would result in debt later on in life. Now, this sounds really absurd for some people, like, how can me being bullied at school impact my finances when I'm in 40s? I'm here to tell you it will be, right? And the reason is because your energetic field has these traumas that haven't been dealt with, and because of that, they're attracting these similar circumstances. Now, as an adult, you're not going to come and get bullied. Okay, maybe you may get bullied in your work environment, but most of us, we're not going to get bullied at all, are we? So the way, or we're not going to be abused again as adults. So the likelihood is for you to retain the status quo of that humiliation or shame or whatever have you is through debt or lack of savings or some other means. Okay, so there's so many different traumas which can hold us back, but people don't address them. And now I've worked with thousands and thousands of people in general, but coaches, people who specifically the kind of people I work with are coaches, consultants, and CEOs. And now, up until now, I've worked with over 2,000 of them. And every single time, if they're stuck in a particular income level, if they're stuck in a particular, they're not gaining momentum, or they're stuck in the feast and famine cycle, I know for a fact that there's somewhere along the lines there is an emotional trauma that hasn't been addressed, and that has to be looked at. And this is what we focus on very, very clearly. So in my 12-month mastermind, I always say this, it's not for the faint-hearted. If you come to work with me, don't expect all hairy-fairy and, or writing about, I love to be rich and I love money and so forth. We address the whole root cause of your issues. And this is why my results for my clients are amazing, because I don't fluff around. You can't fluff around if you want to deal with money blocks. Just saying affirmations daily is not going to help you. They help you a little bit on a certain extent, but it's not going to help you at a deep core level. It's not going to give you the kind of results you're looking for. So in order for you to, take a quantum leap in your income, you have to go internal and see what emotional traumas are stopping you from moving ahead, because these emotional traumas have become your money blocks. They're stopping money from coming to you. and you have to address them head on. And you really can't do this. The kind of work I do emotionally, I warn people when they come to my mastermind, like, if you know, and this is why I'm very strict with the kind of people I bring into a mastermind. I'm very clear about you cannot come into the mastermind unless you're ready to address these emotional traumas, and they will make you cry. They will cause you pain. You need to be mentally prepared to go through the pain, because once, my mother had this saying when I was younger, it's better to cry once than to cry continuously for a long period of time, which basically meant was, if you're going to go through something, go through it in like all of it together at once, just cry all your heart out once, and then you're done. Then move ahead. This is the kind of thing that I do when, you know, I start working with people with the traumas. What I aim to do is for you to address this trauma. For example, if someone's been sexually abused, we go through that trauma and we really, address what it is. Now, not only am I going to ask you to deal with the trauma and heal from it, I'm also going to make you, get you to forgive the perpetrator. Even though they may have never apologized, they may not feel remorseful for it, they may not have any guilt whatsoever about it. We're not forgiving them for their sake, we're forgiving them for our own sake. So I'm going to make you deal with that. Now, because of the kind of strategies and kind of tools I help you to deal with that trauma, once we've dealt with it, you let it go. And this is one of the major reasons why, for the mastermind, our forgiveness is the module 1. I always say forgiveness is a path to prosperity. For this reason, we go heavy in on this, but people get phenomenal results quite early on. So the first part of the mastermind for me is based on 4 modules, which is forgiveness, and then early summer paradigm, mum story, dad story, in the child. These 4 modules form the beginning of the first quarter of the mastermind, and they get the most results because they go in deep, but they're not easy. Right. The thing is, a lot of people want to use the law of attraction in the favor. They want to do all these things, but they're not ready to address the deep-rooted causes for their issues. They don't want, as I say, they want to deal with the symptoms. They don't want to deal with the root cause. So if you've got sniffles, if you've got sore throat, if you've got headache, if you've got temperature, those are symptoms. Those are symptoms of what's going on with you. The root cause could be flu, could be something more sinister, could be COVID. You need to address what is the root cause of your disease, not the actual symptoms. The symptoms will go, you may temporarily go away for a little while, but they'll come back. This is what people have. They make money, they lose money. They make money, they lose money. And they don't have that consistent income rise either, because they're not ready to address their deep core rooted issues, which is causing them to be stuck where they are. Does that make sense? So I hope that makes sense to you, that what actually are money blocks. Money blocks are just emotional traumas, either experienced by yourself personally, or witnessed by you when your parents suffered it, or thirdly, it could be generational, something that was experienced by your generations gone past, and the trauma has been passed on to you, over a period of through the generations. Now I'm going to add a little bit in here. There is no scientific proof for what I'm about to say, but I always think science is always behind, intuitives. And I really feel that emotional trauma is also passed in through our DNA. I really feel that. It could be, maybe at some point when equipment has been developed enough to be able to, prove what I'm saying, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll be able to do some research on this and later on in my life and be able to prove it. But I really feel that DNA, not only just does it bring eye color, dictate your eye color, your hair color, your skin tone, and so forth. I think there's elements of memories which are captured in the DNA, which actually cause us to feel and behave in certain ways as well. And I think there is element of emotional, I think your emotions do impact your DNA, do impact your cells as well. That research is still ongoing, so there is no concrete scientific data to back up a lot of the things I'm saying. I think eventually in the next 5, 10, 20 years, science will back up what I'm saying. But for the timing, I want you to understand, let's leave the scientific backing to one side. Let's just think about this, feel into this. And I'm telling you this right now, that after seeing and working with over 2,000 coaches, consultants, and CEOs now, I'm here telling you very, very explicitly that if you're not moving ahead with your business, if you're not moving ahead with your goals, and especially when it comes to money, then you need to address your money blocks. And your money blocks are emotional traumas that you have to look in deep and see what they are and deal with them appropriately. And unless you do, you're going to stay in this rut. You're going to stay in this cycle where you win, you lose, you win, you lose, you win, you lose, as I call it, the feast and famine cycle. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please do leave us a review. Do look at all the reviews. And until we meet again, this is 𝐵𝐿 signing off. Take care and bye for now.